Hello Year 10. Today I'm going to give you feedback on the Part D question that you did for me last week, which was discussing the statement abortion can never be justified. Your assignments have been handed back to you on Teams, and if possible I'd like you to reopen that assignment that I have marked and add your feedback. Now if you've done your assignment or your Part D question handwriting it in your book, you can just go to your book and annotate your answer. So we're going to, in today's lesson, just as we would do in class, we're going to annotate, add the whole class feedback to your individual piece of work. So everybody's going to record hopefully 2 what went wells and at least 1 even better if, and then you're going to do your now task. So as I said, if you've done this question in your exercise book, you can annotate it by hand with a pen. If you've done this if you've word processed it, then you might want to open up your word process document or open it again on Teams and then add your annotations. You could maybe change the colour of your font so it's clear what is feedback and what isn't. So we're going to have a look at some examples of answers that exemplify these, but these were the general what went wells. I don't want you to write anything yet because I'm going to show you some examples before you then decide which what went wells apply to your answer. So I said to you that for the life and death topic you have to include a non-religious response. It's best to play this safe and have a non-religious response as a paragraph, but it would count as well if you used a non-religious response as a counter argument. But so that you get it in there, in your head I would be thinking to myself, for my Part D, for the life and death topic, I'm going to have a non-religious paragraph. Okay, that could be a humanist view, you could be referring to someone who's a utilitarian, so to Mill or Bentham. Quite a few of you made really good use of Peter Singer, which takes us to our second what went well. So you refer to secular ethical theories, and I actually saw that phrase in some pieces of writing, such as utilitarianism or specifically preference utilitarianism. So if that was you, that was really good to see. There were also some good examples of general humanist responses, but referring to key terms and key ideas. So things like having personal choice or autonomy, not limiting that freedom unless you're harming others. So that was really good to see. What I also liked was in a number of your answers, if not everyone that I marked actually, where a religious view was given, and every answer had a religious view, it was linked to a denomination. And that approach of going from the very general down to specific is a good one. So saying you could agree with this view and someone who might give this response would be a Roman Catholic. So identifying denominations is a good way of helping yourself move up the mark scheme. And then supporting that religious view with evidence, and this was done really well. So whether you're referring to the Didache, to Bible teachings, so Jeremiah was used particularly well, using quotes from people like Pope Francis, using natural law. Some of you referred to the General Synod when you were giving Church of England views. What I would say is that I looked at 1 or 2 answers and I thought to myself, now would they remember that big long quote in an exam? Because I know I wouldn't, and I do this for a living. So when using quotes, you want a little sound bite that you're likely to remember. Please don't waste your energy and your sort of mental load, as it were, trying to remember a huge long quote. The explanation is more important than the quote. On the whole, I saw some really good counter arguments. I could see people using our structure of answer, back it up, challenge, and then make a decision. and the challenge is the counter arguments. And I was particularly pleased where I could see people supporting those counter arguments by linking to a religious teaching or an ethical theory. Again, I could see, we're down here now, some really good use of our suggested structure of answer, back it up, challenge and decide, whereas at the end of each paragraph I could see people pausing to make a decision or a judgment, and that's part of the marking criteria for Part D. And remember, we've said to you, make a mini judgment at the end of each paragraph, because if you run out of time, you don't want to have left all your judging, if you like, until the end, because you might not get there, particularly for your final Part D on an exam question. So make the judgments as you move through each paragraph. What was also good to see was a number of you linking back to the question, making note of the hinge words in the question. So, whenever you've got a statement that uses the word never or always, that's where you want to focus your evaluation, because that's a really, really bold claim. You also want to see where you've got a word like justified, you want to see that repeatedly used in each paragraph. And for most of you, that did happen. Obviously, you want to refer to abortion as well. But don't write anything yet. I'm going to show you some examples of answers and what I thought was good about them. So I'm not going to name the who has handed in this work. You may recognise the handwriting, but I'm not going to name them. What's interesting is what they've written, not who they are. So this candidate has done a really good job of using a secular theory, a non-religious response, which is essential in Part D's. So if I just read, just in case it's not, the writing is quite small. So this candidate has written, I'm going to start here, a second response to this statement that abortion can never be justified. Look at how they've linked back to the statement, which is good, is that it is wrong. Peter Singer, so she's named, I've given away it's a girl, she's named the thinker that she's going to use, believes abortion can be justified and that should say be ethical. He said even a viable fetus is not rational or self-aware. He challenges, when does a fetus become human, conception, birth, when they can think for themselves. Also, he believes abortion is a female right. It is their own body, therefore being her choice. I perhaps would have used the word preference here to link back with the fact that he's a preference utilitarian. But that's a minor criticism. In addition, nice use of linking phrases that we know Eduqas love to see. I can see that this candidate is building up the evidence. So in addition, Singer is in favour of abortion to curve over, is that what that says? Population. We are already overpopulated. Why let unwanted children here? To challenge this is a Church of England view on abortion, is that it is only justifiable if it puts the mother at high risk. My decision for this response is abortion is justifiable. What I like about this answer is it's clearly linked to the question. They've used justified a number of times, which is an important word in the question. They've named the thinker. They've got the thinker's views correct. They've raised the kind of questions that Peter Singer raises about, when really does life begin? As I said, it would have been good if they'd have spoken about preferences rather than choices. And, sorry, that's my notebook playing up. And, Peter Singer does raise this point that we're living in an overpopulated world, and so why add unwanted children to it? So that is very good. Good use of challenge from the Church of England. It might have been good to have seen this supported a little bit, perhaps with a Bible passage, or explained a little bit more, but that's a minor criticism. I would say This really is almost a waste of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 words. If you're going to make a decision, you do need to give a reason for that decision. Okay, so it's not enough to just say, I think this is convincing, I agree. You need to say why. But again, overall, this is a really, really good paragraph giving Peter Singer's views on abortion. It's not overly wordy. I could imagine them doing this in 6 to 7 minutes. So well done. Next one is a student who has supported their religious view with a range of evidence. Again, I'm going to attempt to read it, not because I think you can't read, but because this might be quite small on screen. I will send you, my lovelies, the original PowerPoint that I'm talking over, because then you can zoom in if you want to. So a second response to this statement is that it is also wrong. It might have been good to have said what the statement is so that you're linking back to the question. This comes from the Church of England. To support this, in 1980 it stated that we see abortion, the termination of that life by the act of man, as a great moral evil. I like this because sometimes, because candidates want to present a contrast between Church of England views and Roman Catholic views, they almost have the Church of England saying that abortion is okay, and the Church of England certainly does not think that. So this candidate has made very clear that for the Church of England, abortion is not a good thing. So this emphasises how poorly the Church of England views abortion. Furthermore, in Jeremiah 1:5, now, is that 3:5:1:5? You don't have to give this little bit of the reference. You can just say, furthermore, in the book of Jeremiah or the prophet Jeremiah, is a reference made to God knowing the individual before I formed you in the womb. This suggests that abortion is wrong because God knows us even before we are in the womb. It might be good to have added here, God cares for, God loves fetuses. The next bit of this quote is, I set you apart. So it's that idea of God has a plan for you in advance. And if you perform an abortion, you're interfering with that plan. But generally, good use of evidence, good choice of quote. I like how they've just given a little clip of the quote. They haven't written it all out, and that they've spent longer talking about the quote than writing the quote out. That would be my guide when you're using quotes in exam questions. Spend longer writing about the quote than writing the quote out. So to challenge this view, nice phrasing, flagging up to the examiner, I'm meeting the requirements of this question. To challenge this view, humanists would say that we are free to do anything as long as we aren't harming others. Good. Nice challenge. Made sure they've got in a non-religious view, which is important for Part D. They could perhaps have used more key terms. So, for example, the word autonomy, which means free choice. They could also have referred to the harm principle, but I'm being picky. It is a good challenge. Humanists recognise that life is valuable, but believe that quality of life is also important when making decisions about life and death. Nice use of phrase, quality of life, is one of our key terms for the unit. But they could have said there, therefore, in terms of extreme disability, they might be supportive of abortion. And look, I was being picky, where I said before, I'd like them to have used the word autonomy. They have here. They value humans' personal autonomy, and it goes on a little bit there. A really good paragraph, good use of challenges, good use of key terms, good use of evidence. This was a candidate who got a high score overall, as you can probably guess. So well done. Another one on supporting religious views with evidence. So here we go. Again, I'm not reading it to you because I think you can't read. I'm reading it because it's quite small. So a response to this statement that abortion can never be justified, so that's good because they've used the phrasing from the statement to show they're answering the question, would be that this is right. This view would come from a Roman Catholic. Can you remember that I said to you that going from the general to the specific is a good response? And that's what this candidate has done. They have given a general response, I agree with this statement, and then they've gone very specific and they've said who would give that view. That's a really good opener to a paragraph. To support this view, evidence from Pope Francis where he says it is never excusable even when the fetus has a serious illness. It's like hiring a hitman. Nice snippet of a quote there. This suggests the Roman Catholic view is abortion will never be an option. I'm being really picky. It might have been better to have said abortion will never be justified, so you're linking back with the question. Furthermore, RC's is fine because she's put Roman Catholic here. Roman Catholics believe life begins at conception, so at this point the baby is human and should be protected. I like how this candidate is explaining views. They haven't just said Roman Catholics believe life begins at conception, so abortion can't be justified. They've added a little bit more explanation. Moreover, nice linking phrase that we know Eduqas love to see. Moreover, Pope John Paul II says, I can confirm that the direct and voluntary killing of an innocent human being is always gravely wrong. I would say to the student, are you going to remember all of that? It would have been enough to have said, Pope John Paul II said, abortion is always gravely wrong. This quote was said at Evangelum Vitae. This is the name of an encyclical. That's impressive you've remembered that. This teaches us abortion can never be justified. Nice linking back to the question, as it is murder. My challenge for this response is a humanist view. What if the birth of the child causes more harm than good for the parents, affecting the child's quality of life from being unwanted? Nice challenge. It's always a good idea in a Part D, or often a good idea in Part D, to challenge a religious view with a non-religious view, and vice versa. And then they've made a decision, but again, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm not sure this is a great use of 9 words, because you need a reason for your decision. I suspect I've given this candidate a now task about supporting their judgments. So why is it that this candidate is agreeing with the Roman Catholic view? This one here is an answer that's been typed up, so I've just copied and pasted it in. And again, this is an example of a religious response using a lot of evidence. I would say that this is a long paragraph, so I'd ask whoever owns this piece of writing to honestly think, could you write this out in hand in 7 minutes? I'm not sure they could, but I'm being picky. A response to this statement that abortion can never be justified is that it's correct. This view would come from Roman Catholics. Again, going from the general to the specific. So giving an answer, giving a response, and then saying who would give it. To support this view, we could use evidence from Thomas Aquinas' precepts from natural law. Good use of evidence. If you get natural law right, that's often something that bumps you up to the top of the mark scheme. It would contradict the 2 primary precepts, good use of key terms, of preserving life and reproducing. We could also, so showing that she's building up evidence, use evidence from Pope Francis and Pope John Paul II to agree with this statement. Pope John Paul said, the direct and voluntary killing of an innocent human being is always gravely immoral, which means he believes that abortion in any circumstance is always wrong. Might have been better to have said, so he agrees that abortion can never be justified, and then you're linking back to the question. Pope Francis agreed with him, saying that terminating a pregnancy is like hiring a hitman and is never excusable. We could also use, now I don't think they need this bit here, because they've given a Roman Catholic view and they've backed that up 1, 2, 3 times already. So perhaps they could cut this out. However, it is correct. We could also use the Roman Catholic belief of when life begins to back up this statement as correct. Roman Catholics believe that life begins at conception, so abortion would consequently be the murder of a human. So all of that is correct, it's just a bit long. And so I would maybe miss out this last bit or miss out one of the popes. I would shorten the quotes down. So just saying Pope John Paul II said abortion is gravely immoral would do. Then they've got their challenge, and their challenge is coming from the Church of England. Now remember, when you challenge a Roman Catholic view with a Church of England view, you don't want to give the impression that the Church of England thinks abortion is acceptable, which this candidate doesn't do, but it's something to be aware of. However, the Church of England would challenge this view and say that abortions are wrong, which is good, unless there are strictly limited conditions when it would be the lesser of two evils. Very, very good challenge to that view. And then they give an example to support, which if you have time is a good technique, and they use the example of a child being very ill, or if the mother was likely to die if the pregnancy continued. And then they've given their judgment. So I find the Church of England view more convincing, as they allow pregnancies to be terminated if the mother's life is at risk, and Roman Catholics don't. If the mother's life was at risk, a Roman Catholic would permit an abortion, but it would not be something they would want to do. So that's perhaps a little bit overstated. I think this is fairer because if the mother dies during pregnancy, then there is a chance the fetus will die and also have complications or be motherless. So good supporting of the view there. Well done. So now we're looking at making a judgment on which view was more convincing. I like the phrasing that this candidate has used. Having looked at the evidence, I'm most convinced by the claim that abortion can be justified because if abortion was illegal, unsafe abortions would increase. There are fewer, that should be there are, not is, there are fewer medical risks attached to abortion than actually giving birth. This is a humanist view, I agree with that. I like this answer because they've reminded the examiner that they've looked at all sorts of evidence, and so they deserve a good mark. They've clearly referenced the question. They're talking about whether abortion can be justified. They've given a reason, and they've linked that to a humanist view. That is a really good judgment in actually only 4 or 5 lines. That's also impressive that they've managed to give a view, link to the question, support with evidence in that shorter space. And remember, these questions are quite hard to answer to time, so you don't want to be writing more than you need to. Another candidate linking back to the question, and you want to be linking back to the question at the start and end of each paragraph. So my final decision for the statement, abortion cannot be justified, is that it is wrong. Abortion is fine because it is a woman's body and the freedom of what she wants. They could have used the word autonomy there. Furthermore, nice linking, a fetus could be seriously ill or doesn't have many chances of survival, and the mother might choose to terminate to prevent pain for the child. So being really picky, they could have briefly referenced the harm principle and used the word autonomy, but they've clearly linked back to the question, clearly given a view, and they've supported it. Another one that I have copied and pasted from somebody's answer, and this is about linking back to the question and making a judgment. So having looked at the evidence from the Church of England and humanists, I like this. They've reminded the examiner they've looked at evidence. They've reminded the examiner that they've looked at a religious view and a non-religious view. That's a good start. I am convinced by the claim that abortions can be justified, because if you believe that having abortion is playing God, so is all the medical interventions to prolong life. Also, if having abortions were made illegal, the number of illegal and unsafe abortions would increase. So this is a really, really good answer because it's clearly linked back to the question and they've given reasons for their view. So well done. So now I want you to put this video on pause with this table on screen, and I want you to pick 2 what went wells. So you might want to go back and have a look at some of the other answers if you need to, but which what went wells apply to your answer. So read your answer through, obviously, and then underneath in either a different colour pen or a different colour font, if you're typing, what are the 2 what went wells you would add? So now we're going to look at the even better ifs, and we have referenced some of these already. So even better if, you must have a religious view. It is an RS exam. There were 1 or 2 people who have given really sophisticated non-religious responses, but they've forgotten to put the religious view in. I understand why you've done that, because we've spent the last lesson or even few lessons looking at non-religious views, but you have to have some religion in there. It's an RS exam. If you don't have a religious view, you're going to be capped at about half marks. Equally, for this section, if you don't have a non-religious view, you're going to be capped at about half marks. Next one, when making a judgment, say why something is convincing. And we did see 1 or 2 candidates when I was going through answers who were just saying this is convincing but not giving a reason. So have a look at your judgments. They tend to come at the end of paragraphs. Have you said why you're convinced by something? If you haven't, you've wasted your time writing that sentence. 1 or 2 of you have given a humanist view or Peter Singer's view, and you've identified that view as a pro-life view. So that's this even better if, and this one here. Now, humanists do not have a single unified view on abortion. However, most humanists have a pro-choice view because they believe in things like freedom of choice. And so I wouldn't say in an exam that most humanists are pro-life. That's just not correct. I also would not give Peter Singer as an example of a pro-life thinker. Next one, pick your counter-arguments carefully. Often it's good to have a religious criticism of a non-religious view and vice versa. Although we did see 1 candidate who did a really good job of countering a Roman Catholic view with a Church of England view. Often, when it's your non-religious view, the best criticisms do come from religious ideas. Not always, but it's often the easiest way to give an effective counter-argument. That might be where taking a minute or 2 to plan comes in handy, so you can choose the best counter-arguments. We've mentioned this already, get the humanist view right. So they tend to be pro-choice because of a belief in autonomy. So most of you, unless you've got 15 marks, maybe 14 or 15, should have an even better if. So put me on pause and record just 1 even better if. So final task is to complete your now task. So immediately you're putting into action some improvement for your answer. Now everybody has a now task to do, including those of you who have got 14 or 15 marks. So I'm not necessarily saying to those people who are up in the top band of 13, 14, 15 marks that you needed to add this in, particularly if you've got 15 marks, you've got full marks, don't worry, but I'm getting you to practice your subject knowledge. So have a look at your feedback on Teams and I will have told you which now task to do. So now task 1 is add a paragraph in which you give a religious response to the statement supported by evidence. I would like you to name the denomination and, give your evidence, whether that's a Bible passage or a church teaching. And then how would Peter Singer respond to this view? So that is now task 1. So you're giving a supported view and then a challenge. Now task 2 is about making judgments. So give a clear reason for your judgment. Support with examples or moral reasoning. Moral reasoning is just logical thinking. What are the consequences of you doing something? Is it good or bad? Explaining your thinking. Now task 3, how might a humanist counter the Roman Catholic view on this statement? So that's quite an open now task, and you could use any of our non-religiousized thinkers who might influence a humanist view. So you might talk generally about autonomy and quality of life, or you might want to give a utilitarian view, whether that's classic utilitarianism or Peter Singer. You could also refer to the harm principle there. Now task 4, give the view of Peter Singer on the statement, referring to speciesism, consciousness and preferences. So I've given you a clear framework to use there when you're writing about Peter Singer. Question 5, or now task 5, how would a Roman Catholic use natural law to give a response to this statement? How would Peter Singer respond to this view? I've given this now task to a few people who have got full marks, but they've not used natural law, and this is just a chance to practice using natural law. And question 6, how would a Roman Catholic respond to Peter Singer's view? And try and use some evidence to support that. So you are going to hand in to me just your now task. Okay, whether you do that on Teams and you photograph the work in your book, which is fine to do, or you type it on your assessment and then you hand it back in. So you're just handing in your now task. Next lesson, we're going to carry on doing Peter Singer, and we're going to look at Peter Singer, animal rights and the environment. Thank you very much.